Welcome to the slightly longer explanation interpretation for the solar value of 11, namely the Jack of Hearts. The Jack of Hearts is among a group of very special cards because it is one of the three fixed cards. Fixed card means it doesn't change position. It hasn't changed position through the first quadration from the spiritual spread to the mundane spread. So as that same mechanism is applied to the mundane spread for year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, etc., it won't change either. And the other three fixed cards, well, two fixed cards, actually three in total, are the King of Spades at the top left of the spread, and it is the Eight of Clubs on the Mars line in the Neptune column. The Jack of Hearts placed on the Venus line in the Jupiter column. Blessings, expansion, growth through love. Like Jesus nailed to the cross, the Christ energy. Very high expectations when it comes to love, but here to experience a number of disappointments. And we'll go through that one by one as we go through the planetary cards. Jacks. Jacks are court cards, and court means different level, higher level of consciousness, higher level of evolution. The Jack, however, representing the androgynous one, so the one that is neither here nor there, so the males can be quite female and the females can be quite male or display male energy, they are about to turn into a queen or a king. The Jacks want all the perks that the being in the court or being part of the court brings, but they don't want to have any of the responsibilities. They're often counsel to the queen and the king, and they learn this way, but they would really like to have it their way. You know, that's the youthful energy that knows everything better. Jacks are notoriously unreliable if they act on the lower side, and they can be untrustworthy. They're crafty because that's their energy. They need to do this because that's the energy required for becoming a king or a queen. To test out limits, to see what can be changed and improved. And changing and improving is, in fact, the 11th tone of the Tzolk'in calendar of the Maya. And here you can see that it maps beautifully. All the tones from 1 to 13 pretty much match the qualities of the cards from Ace to King. The Jack of Hearts, lessons in love, spiritual sacrifice. And for that Jack of Hearts, that starts with its first card already and early in life. Because here we find the Nine of Clubs. It's the card of universal knowledge. So they're keen to learn, but they always have to let go and often let go of mental patterns. The 9 stands for frustrations and disappointments in the early years from birth up to the age of 13, what the Mercury period stands for. So they need to learn to be generous because they will encounter disappointments and frustrations in communication. They don't understand others because the Jacks think differently, and that leads to the Jacks not being understood by others, unless you know the system and then you know a Jack and then you understand the Jack. But those who don't can't really come to grips with that Jack energy, with that youthful energy, the desire to change things, the desire to improve things. Your entire mental structure relies on growing up, relies on wising up, so that you, first of all, can handle the disappointments and the frustrations, and secondly, and ideally, prevent them in the first place. Once again, it's always about acquiring knowledge, processing that knowledge, developing an understanding so that the potentially negative influences that we've been given in certain positions, cards, periods of our life do not affect us negatively. Because remember, the stars incline, but they do not compel, and neither do the cards. The Nine of Clubs in Mercury also means that you're often in closure mode. That sort of you're finishing off things, that you're letting go of the old and inviting the new. In Venus, we find, surprise, surprise, another 9. And here's the 9 of Spades. Venus stands for beauty, for relationships. Not only personal, but also business relationships. And here with the 9 of Spades, we have a rather tricky card because it's the card of double endings. We're talking about the last suit, spade suit, and we're talking about the last single digit number, the 9. And that often makes it difficult for the Jack of Hearts to lead fulfilling relationship lives. Endings, endings, endings. It's about spiritual completions, and those spiritual completions make that Jack of Hearts very empathetic. You know, the placement, it's straight on the Venus line and it's on the Jupiter column. So these people understand, they can feel, and that makes them very suited to take up professions with others. And we'll see that just now when we come to the Mars card and the other cards a little later on as well. So in relationships, it's always about closure, it's about letting go, it's about endings of relationships. But it's not a punishment, it's a growth process, it's an initiation process. It's an evolution, it's a gateway to spiritual maturity. Not easy for humans, but certainly doable, especially when one knows what one's cards are. In Mars, we'll find the Two of Hearts. This is interesting. Why? Because the Two of Hearts is a semi-fixed card in combination with the Ace of Clubs. The Jack of Hearts being a fixed card means every second year in Mars it either has the Two of Hearts or the Ace of Clubs its entire life long. So either the union in love is being aggressively pursued, sometimes overly aggressive, because Mars can go that way, or the desire for knowledge is aggressively pursued, sometimes overly aggressive. And that requires from the Jack of Hearts to find a balance. Because with that Mars energy only featuring those two cards, that makes that person rather limited, because other cards have other Mars cards every single year. But for the Jack of Hearts, it's either that or that. Either the Two of Hearts or the Ace of Clubs. Either the union in love or the pursuit of knowledge. The initiation of new mental constructs, new mental projects, etc. Difficult, very difficult. And that's why it's so important that people born under the Jack of Hearts know their cards and know this particular constellation. Two of Hearts is about union in love. They are seeking the ideal mate, and they do this rather aggressively. And they need to learn to let other people come to them, because Mars is the one that takes the initiative. But when it comes to relationships, well, union in love can only be accomplished when one is actually open to receiving the other person. And in order to receive the other person, you have to become passive. But under Mars, that is a bit of a challenge. That's also something the Jack of Hearts needs to learn. It's written that they likely pursue people, collaborations, or even rivals with fervor. That can be romantic, but it can also play out in work or art. They seek that spark that only happens when they lock into sync with someone else. And to lock into sync requires compromise, requires responsibility, requires awareness, and it requires the ability to really step back, open up, not be in the way, and maybe not have such high expectations when it comes to love, because that certainly sits in the Jack of Hearts DNA. In Jupiter, we'll find the King of Hearts. And the King of Hearts is emotional leadership energy. So the Jack of Hearts expands under Jupiter when they take the lead, when they become the loving father figure, because that's what the King of Hearts stands for. And to become the loving father needs to be compassionate, needs to be understanding, needs to be present, needs to be soft, and also needs to accept that others are different and will be different, and those differences will have to be taken into account. So any kind of job in inverted commas, that requires parenting, mentoring, coaching, counseling, that's what the Jack of Hearts is really suited for, because that's where the expansion is. That's where Jupiter rewards them. And again, those jobs will be connected to emotions, will be connected to relationships, will be connected to the soft and warm and fuzzy and loving side. So here, the King of Hearts stays calm in the center of storm. Love and wisdom, in their case, are abundant resources. And so they need to employ this, understand that they come here with that Christ energy in a way, but need to learn to elevate this from a Jack of Hearts to a King of Hearts in order to really receive the abundance and the blessings that Jupiter brings. So they need to grow up, and it's not being made easy for them with those 2 nines in Mercury and Venus. And those periods may pass, but every second year, a 2 of Hearts or an Ace of Clubs in Mars, that is a constant challenge for the Jack of Hearts. But as they reach their Jupiter years, that means from 39 to 52, they can really capitalize on that. So the early years won't be easy for them, especially in that Mars period. They need to learn to balance their desire for knowledge with their desire for partnership, because that also revisits them a little later with the 2 of Diamonds, but we'll get to that in a moment. So here, an evolution for the Jack of Hearts, especially in that Jupiter period where the King of Hearts is present. Then we come to Saturn, and in Saturn we find another king, and that's the King of Diamonds, and the King of Diamonds is the successful businessman. So Saturn loves order and structure because that's how it rolls. And the King of Diamonds here means they are meant, the Jack of Hearts, for something big, for something really big, and for having other people to work for them in an orderly and structured manner in a business. So they are called to grow up and reach higher levels of understanding, higher levels of consciousness when it comes to values in general and to money in particular. So they can really make it big if they grow up, if they decide to take the high road rather than the low road. And they will have had their fair share of low roads in the early years, in the Mercury and the Venus periods. But then when it comes to Jupiter and Saturn, 2 kings, very strong energy, and really an immense opportunity for the Jack of Hearts to grow up, to grow into that higher level of consciousness that it actually wants. And that's where that Christ energy can really shine and come to the fore. What else is written here? Card of material mastery and responsibility with values. Karma card in a way. In a way, it brings lessons through leadership, finances, or personal worth. Challenges. Often knowing your true value and without becoming rigid or controlling, because the King of Diamonds is the only one-eyed king, so it can become a little blind, on one eye, and it can become controlling because it's a king, and a king needs to control in a way. But sort of under Saturn, there's always a risk of too much, because Saturn already brings that energy of order, structure, and strictness with it. But in a positive way, this can become really, really big and really, really profitable for that Jack of Hearts. You're asked to mature your relationship with success, not just achieve it, but to embody it responsibly. Others will look up to you to set the bar. Because the king, and everybody's looking up to the king, and you have to shine and lead by example. And not just only money, not just the moolah, the dough, but values in general. And that is, once again, values, that's elevation of the Jack energy, which is still on the rather immature side when it was born. Then we are looking at Uranus, and Uranus brings us the Six of Hearts, but Uranus shakes things up. The Six of Hearts is the Peacemaker card. It's the card of karmic responsibility and compromise in relationships. It wants to find peace, but it seems to find that peace through shaking things up under Uranus. It says it brings balance, destiny, and fairness into the realm of personal freedom. It can make them an unconventional peacemaker. Unconventional Uranus, peacemaker, Six of Hearts. They don't fight for peace, they design it. They may rebel against injustice, not loudly, but with strategic love, quiet idealism, dream of fair relationships and karmic balance, and they're wired to surprise people with how centered and loving their rebellions are. So it's an interesting card, quite a juxtaposition here between that Six of Hearts desiring peace and Uranus saying, hey, come on, we're going to shake things up. But the shaking up of things is a common theme for the Jack of Hearts. And here, the Six of Hearts is almost coming in to say, all right, you little rebel rouser, you've created so much noise and you've annoyed so many people with that Uranus energy, try to, balance things out, have a happy ending, have a nice and peaceful ending. Yes, changes and rebellions are necessary because they are part of the renewal process. But at the end of the day, there should always be peace. And that would then sort of make for a lovely combination between Uranus and the Six of Hearts. In Neptune, we'll find the Four of Clubs, and that's the card of mental satisfaction and stability. It's a bit rigid when it comes to mental things. And under Neptune, we find that illusory, is it called illusory? Illusory? Nebulous, dreamy, fantasizing energy. Once again, a little bit of a contrast here. Interesting pairing, it said. You long for mental peace, for certainty in the midst of mystery. The card keeps your dreams grounded. I love this, so this card keeps your dreams grounded, makes it very practical because, sort of the Four of Clubs is a very practical card. There's always a spreadsheet nearby. They may struggle with escapism if their environment is too chaotic. Brilliant. Also that sentence, they may struggle with escapism, Neptune energy, if the environment is too chaotic, which doesn't really suit the Four of Clubs, because the Four of Clubs needs ordered mental structures. It doesn't like chaos. That's where the Five of Clubs comes in. That's where the Three of Clubs was. But Four of Clubs wants it straight, narrow, or boxed in, like in a four. So they need mental stability. When things become too chaotic, and then under Neptune, not good for the Jack of Hearts. So they need to ensure, and that actually plays into the Nine of Clubs in Mercury, because those mental structures, that the mental stability is not just popping up, it's being worked for. It needs to be created first in order to enjoy the fruits of one's labor. And the Nine of Clubs in Mercury keeps reminding the Jack of Hearts to let go of mental structures that don't serve in order to keep those that do serve, and in order to create the structure that is necessary for a stable mind, for a stable mindset. So the Jack of Hearts is always asked to sift out the stuff that creates stress. And often, because of the losses, the frustrations, and the disappointments early in life, the Jack of Hearts needs to work through family issues. Because there could be someone in the family that has caused them significant amount of grief, where sort of the frustration, the disappointments came from, because obviously sort of in one's family environment, one would love to have order and structure, one would love to have guidance. And if that guidance is missing, that throws the Jack of Hearts off balance, and then it needs to learn this later in life to let go of that, not to point fingers, but to understand where their current mindset, Four of Clubs, comes from. Also what they are dreaming about, because they are dreaming about this in Neptune, because they didn't have this in Mercury, they didn't have this earlier in life. So here they get called to the task to create the mental stability and satisfaction that they didn't have earlier on. And if they don't do this, then they may go through life being deeply disappointed, feeling they have to make sacrifices all the time, and people not living up to their expectations. Besides the point, people are not meant to live up to your expectations, but that's another issue altogether. Sort of you need to find strength and power and repose and stability and peace within yourself. Other people are not meant to give it to you. But this is something that you learn later in life, because initially you think, well, my dad has to give me this, or my mother has to give me this, or the school has to give me this, or the government has to give me this, or the church has to give me this. No, you are giving it to yourself by developing your consciousness, elevating it to a higher level. Finally, Pluto, ego's transformation and death. Here we find the Two of Diamonds. The Two of Diamonds is the wheeler-dealer card. It's the card of union, partnership in values, and also about financial values. So the lifelong transformation for the Jack of Hearts is to find someone they can be in business with, and that helps them out of their single-minded, I can do it all by myself mode, which would only lead to a rut, which would only lead to frustrations and further disappointments, not only in relationships on the Venus side, Nine of Spades, but also mentally with a Nine of Clubs. So here it's important for them to find someone that helps them ramp things up, that encourages them, that brings in energies that the Jack of Hearts doesn't have by default. They're good in a lot of areas, but they're also not good in other areas. And that's where they need that partner. And that is that transformation. It's always like a bit of a stability in values, because those two nines aren't particularly easy. Then come the two kings with the King of Hearts and the King of Diamonds. They like jump all the way to the top, sort of, because it comes, king energy comes with a lot of responsibility. And Jacks, as we know, don't really like that responsibility. They are not there yet on their evolutionary path. But here they are challenged. And with the Two of Diamonds and Pluto, it means find someone, work with him or with her in order to reach the things that you're destined to reach, but that you won't be reaching on your own. With the Two of Diamonds here, you're being asked to evolve your relationship with value exchange, especially in one-on-one settings. That's two energy. This could be business partnerships, shared resources, or how you merge your mission with another's. Pluto here says you must learn to collaborate without losing your power, because the Jack of Hearts, at least in my estimation or experience, doesn't want to lose power. But in fact, when they team up with someone, that's when their real power comes in, because that's when they can shine, because then there's someone who is helping them in those areas where they do have weaknesses. And once again, no business mogul ever accomplished this on his own. They had partners, they had teams in order to grow the business to the higher level, because it's an absolute illusion to think that you can do this just by yourself. If you're young, you may do this, but as you age, you realize it only works in collaboration and in conjunction with others. And here's again, it's not about compromise, it's about co-creation. And that might be their biggest transformation yet. That wraps up the Jack of Hearts. I hope it gave you a little more insight. We have a person with a path that is no small task. They're here to love wisely, to lead with empathy, and to navigate deep personal change with grace. Planetary spread brings both challenge and gift, an invitation to grow beyond the romantic idealism of your birth card and into someone who anchors real heart-led transformation. And in that heart-led transformation, they are asked to let go again and again and again. But we know that after the 9 comes the 10, and after the letting go comes something better, because ideally we've learned something and we've let go of that which no longer serves us. Yes, the Jack of Hearts. First court card, first fixed card. And if you like it, please click on a like, click on a subscribe. Add the notification bell that you get notified whenever a new video comes up. And there will be plenty. There are already plenty. And at the time of recording this video, there are over 70 videos live talking about the basics of cardology and having gone through the first 10 cards, and with the Jack of Hearts, the 11th card. And then you grow into a more mature, into more wise, into a more competent, loving, compassionate, and understanding, and certainly much more powerful person. This is why I'm doing this for you, so that you elevate your own being, and that way we elevate mankind as a whole. Until the Queen of Hearts, I shall bid goodbye and thank you for listening.